Hi, my name is Dr. Hilary Cobb, and for this short presentation, I'm going to talk about the value of sleep. Normally, as a social work professor, I would talk about something technical or academic or something related to social work, but for this presentation, I'm going to go in a different direction and answer a question that I get asked all the time. Do you really have a CPAP machine? Yes, that's right. In all of its Darth Vader space mask glory, at the ripe old age of 39, I have a CPAP machine. At first, I was super embarrassed about it, but after 3 years of using one, it has changed my life, and I've become an informal spokesperson for the value of sleep. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey. I've always had trouble with sleep. Trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, snoring, never feeling rested, you name it. I was the queen of the naps. In fact, I had such bad sleep habits that my husband used to use me as an example of what not to do with sleep when he was working with his clients. Despite my naps and all my hours of sleep, I never woke up feeling rested. I would sleep for 8 to 9 hours a night, drag myself out of bed, drink way too much coffee, only to fall asleep in the afternoon for 2 or 3 more hours. And while I always thought I would wake up rested, looking like this, rejuvenated and ready to go, most of the time I actually woke up looking like this, tired and exhausted. And I didn't even think too much of it. It was just part of who I was for a long time. My family joked about it. I even made jokes about it. Until about 5 years ago, I started noticing something really, really weird in my body. My joints had begun to ache, like really hurt. It became hard to grip a sponge to wipe the counters. I couldn't write more than a few sentences with a pen or a pencil without it starting to hurt my fingers. It felt like my hands and feet were tired and worn out when I woke up, and they would get worse by the end of the day. So, while I felt like I had a decent excuse to stop doing housework, it freaked me out. I have a family history of rheumatoid arthritis, so I went to see my doctor. He did all the blood work and testing and found out that no, I didn't have RA. I didn't even have the genetic marker for it. So while I was relieved, I was still stumped. Why did my joints hurt? On a whim, my doctor asked if I had had a sleep study done. Apparently, wrist and foot pain in clients can be a sign of sleep apnea. He explained that when you stop breathing in your sleep, your body jumps when it wakes up, meaning you never fully rest and your joints end up tired and fatigued in the morning. I was still skeptical, though. I didn't match the stereotype for someone with sleep apnea. I was young, I was female, I had just run a half marathon. But when he asked if I snored and if I ever fell asleep randomly, I remembered all those times falling asleep in front of movies, TV, or while reading. Maybe he was onto something. So I did an at-home sleep study kit because it was way cheaper, and frankly, who can sleep in a strange bed in a lab with scientists watching you? So I used the kit, wrapped myself up in their wires, slept deeply, or at least I thought I did, and shipped it back, eagerly waiting to hear the results. Now, much to my surprise, but not my doctor's, I had moderate sleep apnea. My home study found that I stopped breathing 22 times per hour, which a sleep tech later told me was probably a lower estimate and that I was closer to 30. I literally stopped breathing every other minute all night. No wonder I was so tired in the morning. So at 36, young, in shape, and not matching any stereotypical factors, I got a CPAP, and it changed my life. I felt perky and energized. I stopped napping, and the best part is all my joint tiredness and pain stopped within just a few short weeks of actually starting to get some good sleep. In addition, my mood felt more stable. Because I wasn't so tired, I cut my coffee consumption back significantly and felt less irritable and anxious. My kids noticed that I was more awake and present. I could stay awake through an entire movie, and I didn't fall asleep on the couch at 7 p.m. I felt more confident because I could focus longer and remember more information. In fact, I often say the only reason I was able to complete my doctorate was because of my CPAP machine. Because it was such a drastic change for me, and I'm a researcher at heart, I started doing more and more reading about the effects of sleep apnea and what happens when it starts to affect our good sleep. Some of the symptoms of sleep apnea were very obvious to me, things like snoring, fatigue, and tiredness. But I was unaware that sleep apnea can cause morning headaches, insomnia or difficulty staying asleep, irritability, mood swings, and issues with focus and concentration while awake during the day. There's also a link between sleep apnea and significant physical health issues. The Mayo Clinic finds that sleep apnea can increase your risk of high blood pressure, increase your risk of a heart attack, stroke, or atrial fibrillation, increase the risk of developing insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and shorten your lifespan significantly. I also learned that while some people are at higher risk, for example, men or those who are overweight, there is no one type of person with sleep apnea. 3% of those with apnea are a normal weight, children can have it, and women begin to catch up with men in rates of sleep apnea after menopause. It truly can affect anyone regardless of who you are and how you look. So how does this apply to you? My hope is that discussing this removes some of the stigma that affects people with sleep apnea and that it inspires you and others to take your sleep more seriously. The American Medical Association estimates that 30 million people in the U.S. have sleep apnea, but only 6 million people have been diagnosed with it. I often work with helping professionals who are struggling with feelings of burnout and fatigue. While some of their fatigue is often related to the stress of their job and things like burnout and compassion fatigue, sometimes it's just simply tiredness from undiagnosed apnea. If you have any concerns, I'd encourage you to meet with your doctor. Don't dismiss your tiredness as a part of your life. So while I occasionally have a twinge of embarrassment when I show up for events with my CPAP machine, I remind myself of how far I've come and how taking care of my sleep doesn't just make me a better mother, worker, and friend, but I am decreasing the risk of cardiovascular and other serious health issues in my future. Thank you so much for hearing my story.